Guys, we're back of another episode of Just Context. This week I got something amazing. I got a special guest this week. I would say I would love to do the introduction, but Janelle doesn't know him as close as I am. I've met a couple special people in my lifetime. I'm gonna start with this. I've only met two valedictorians in my lifetime. When I was younger, I met my god brother, who was very astute when he was graduating from college. Second is Miles Brinkley, and it's crazy how Miles was a valedictorian, and I had to find out after he graduated. So that's that's a that's a funny conversation. I've known Miles for quite some time. Miles have left a long lasting impression on me and my family's life, down to my brother-in-law, for things that I have astute for what I would like my son to emulate. Not saying I'm not a great emulation of what he should be, but for people whose progress in life, who's shown that um, there's barriers that can be broken with hard work and dedication. So, guys, with further ado, I would like to introduce you guys to Miles Brinkley.
That's high praise from someone I've looked up to for the last 7, 8 years, and I can't be happier to be on this. Thank you.
Uh, uh no, Miles, I ain't gonna lie. Miles, you've done a lot of different things over the years that's grabbed my attention. Um, it's grabbed my attention because I think I hold you in so much esteem, and I pay attention to what you say, and I feel like our spiritual spirit resonate with each other. There are times I think I've seen you post stuff and do things, and I'm like, man, I would do it, and I'll show it to my wife, and she's like, Miles can do it because Miles ain't got no kids yet, so Miles can have as much fun as he want. You feel me? So we can we can start there. Um, Miles has made foot movements, and guys, not to say the least, I can jump around in so many different circles, but I would like to get to the meat of the issue. One of the reasons why I wanted Miles to come on, I listened to Kenneth Walker speak on the Breonna Taylor situation, about his perspective, his point of view. I was touched by what he said, and I was hurt because at the end of the day, I am also a man. I'm also, and I'm gonna say something dangerous, guys. I'm an overprotective man. I think Janelle can speak for me being overprotective in dangerous ways, ways I should not be overprotective of my wife. So, not saying I'm not condoning what Kenneth Walker did was wrong, but I understand because I know what it feels like to protect something that's valuable to me in ways that may be extreme. So there's so many different ways to look at it. Now, away from that, I think I will just let Miles go. Miles, can you just enlighten me and how you've?
Yeah.
Oh,
So, just for context, for those of us who don't know who Kenneth Walker is, he is Breonna Taylor's former boyfriend. He was the one that was with her in her apartment when the police came in, and he did an interview recently that I guess gave his side of the story, explaining what happened, and where they were at mentally when everything happened. Um, so jumping back, Miles, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into that conversation?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. I am a native of Melbourne, Florida. I graduated Melbourne High School, where I met Cornelius's brother-in-law, Alvin, who is one of my, I don't know, 5, 10 best friends on the earth. I went off to Stanford, graduated in 2018, and I live in the Bay Area. I do some technical consulting. Um, and one thing about me, for context and why this will, I guess, link together, I've been a training shooter since I was 9. So started with, pistols. It's in the family tradition. My family has been Air Force and Army soldiers and airmen for generations. And so we are a pretty, down home country family, as is my granddad from the farms of Fayetteville, Tennessee. He taught my uncle how to shoot. He taught me how to shoot. And that tradition has lived within the three of us and will live on beyond me. And so that's really my hidden talent. I would say that is like the thing that I'm best at, and the thing most people don't know about me. And so when the Breonna Taylor assassination happened, and I use that word very purposefully, it struck a chord in me. And it hit me like nothing else really has. And I don't say that lightly. I think there are only two decisions in my life, well, three. I'll say three decisions in my life that really struck me that way. One was me finding Christ for myself. The second was a decision to go to Stanford, or at least to go out west. I don't know what led me there, but I felt like I had to go. And three, the decision to start in a training network, I should say, in honor of Breonna Taylor and her legacy and what we need to fight for, specifically around arming Black women and training Black women on how to defend themselves and shoot. One place I'd love to start, if you have any, topics, areas you want to explore. I don't think Kenneth Walker needed to express any remorse in anything he did. Kenneth Walker protected his family, his home against, I'm not even going to say, even if he thought they were, invaders or people that were looking to break in the house, even if you recognize that they were police, the police have assassinated people on no-knock warrants, on warrants that were incorrectly served. Fred Hampton died that way. Many other people were assassinated that way. And so the importance that the fact that, he had protection in his home and tried his best, obviously part of that, to speak to that, is he's living. And I know that there's a lot of regret and probably a lot of sadness in the interviews that I listen to, that his loved one is no longer with him. And even such has now become the figurehead of a national movement. But speaking on Kenneth Walker and speaking on the situation, that man did what he needed to do. And it doesn't matter how it's framed in media. If you are a person of truth and you're a person of light, then it has to come to bear that the police were 100% responsible for everything that happened in that situation, including his stress, his trauma, including Breonna's death, and the wanton endangerment that someone was recklessly and lazily charged for.
So, all right, I have three things that I want to address that you just brought up. First is, you said you went to Stanford. What did you go to Stanford for?
Political science.
Okay. So you're, somewhat versed in the things that have been going on recently. Second is, you're talking about Kenneth Walker and the fact that he shouldn't even really be apologizing, which I agree with you. Maybe not for necessarily the same exact reasons, but I do want to address the conversation surrounding the Second Amendment, especially because you have, background in being armed, just in general, right? I know nothing about being armed, which is horrible because you literally just said you want to arm Black women, and I'm like, oh. But so the argument surrounding the Second Amendment, I think, in this situation is interesting to me because the first person that you would ever hear say, I need to defend my property, I need to defend my family, is the person who believes in the Second Amendment. But it has been, months now that I've been seeing people on social media say, well, they didn't have that right, and they shouldn't have, drawn for the guns, and they should have waited to see who was there, and, just a bunch of arguments, saying that he was in the wrong, or there shouldn't have been a gun to begin with. I mean, there's been pictures like crazy of, Breonna holding up the gun prior to anything happening, and it's like, well, if they're licensed to have the gun, I don't really understand the problem, because I personally have seen pictures of families when it comes to, even 4-year-olds in the woods hunting, holding rifles, because as you said, in certain areas of the country, people are raised to do that. People are grown up with rifles in their hands, right? So I kind of want to address the double standard there and what you think about that in this situation specifically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, one thing that I just wanted to say before that kind of made me chuckle was that, that reaction. It's something that I have also had to humble myself on because I'm so gung ho. Many of the people that I've worked with, they aren't familiar with, and in some cases, just have told me, I've never even thought of guns before. I'm not comfortable, but in this situation, it's implored me, and so that's a normal reaction, and that's something that I take into account as well. Regarding that double standard, I have taken it with a special degree of indignance. I wholeheartedly laugh at the idea of a greater white discourse saying that he should have checked the door. And there is a story, because my memory may be long, and I know one of the trials and traumas of being Black in this country is that so many of us are gunned down every day that your memory becomes blurry, faded, numbers, names. I think that might be DoorDash, but he can leave it at the door. So many things become, blurred that, you don't remember. I do happen to remember an incident about maybe 3 or 4 years ago where a young Black man in, I believe, Kentucky, was gunned down through the door because he walked up and asked for help. Do y'all remember a young Black man was knocking at someone's screen door? A white man thought it was an intruder and shot through the screen door, shot clean through the door with a 12-gauge shotgun, took that young man's life, and was acquitted.
I don't even remember hearing that story.
I can actually bring that up as I'm talking.
And Janelle, I think based on and to Miles's context, it's that these things have gone on so long that it becomes a blur. Because I'm gonna say something crazy just to jump out the wazoo, and that this is not to discredit everyone who's died from police violence or from violence in general, but I can't remember everybody's name. That is the most saddened thing that I can say about the situation. Like, there are times I find myself mumbling saying Breonna Taylor's name in the situation because I feel like we've gotten so immune to the fact that Black people are being killed unanimously by police in the wrong ways for so many times. We just seen it because last year I was up in arms, if I remember correctly, about the guy who got shot for trying to, I think, help the disabled kid, and police basically shot him even when he had his hand up, and that hurt my soul. And for weeks his name was in my mouth, and I'm here to say testament, and this is bad, I don't even remember his name now, because this is how common these issues have started becoming. But Miles, I'll let you continue.
No, that was a perfect segue into the point. It happened to be 7 years ago, almost to the date, November 2nd, 2013. Renisha McBride in Detroit, Michigan, was shot through the door by Theodore Paul Wafer on the porch of his Dearborn Heights home. She crashed her car, went through a door asking for help. Wafer opened the front door and shot a shotgun blast through the screen door, killed her in the head. He was acquitted. They prosecuted him, I believe, for second-degree murder. He was found guilty, and I guess they did sentence him. Now, that's rare. In any case, you saw my gut reaction. Any case that I've looked at for that, almost maybe on an 80 or 90th percentile, people are acquitted. People get off. And so I think about what happened in my hometown where, oh my gosh, I am forgetting all these people's names too. The kid that was in Jacksonville with his three-ton car and got shot in his car. And the guy just drove back down and got a pizza and he came back down to Satellite Beach like it was nothing. And they didn't find him guilty at all. All these things live in my head. And so to answer your question of the double standard, I have pictures that probably won't see the light of day because we have to operate differently as Black people. But I have pictures of me as a 10-year-old toting an AK-47. I have pictures of me as a 12-year-old. I have videos of me that I proudly, post now with fully kitted out AR-15s. If you put a target away, about 400 yards in front of me and just gave me a rifle with iron sights, I'd knock it about 9 times out of 10. These things I believe are important because nothing for us has ever been meant for us in this country. I'm not one of the cowboys that, wants the Second Amendment to protect my property. I think that's the difference between why I advocate for it for Black people and for white people. White people want it for property. I want it for my life. When you do the research and find out the origin of police in this country was to be a slave patrol. Modern police was not founded to protect your local neighborhood and get cats out of trees. It was a slave patrol. It was founded in local municipalities to return recently freed men back to plantation, return slaves back to their owners. Nothing in this country has ever been meant for our protection. We were never even supposed to be full-blown citizens. So to me, when people, address that disparity and address the fact that, there is a good number of white people who want Kenneth Walker charged with something and can't remember the fact that, Renisha McBride was shot in the same way and was shot in a much more egregious way. I have honestly nothing other than, get over it. I'm gonna arm my people because if I think of anything, then everything in this country is a hypocrisy in one way or another, and it's just not meant to protect us. Obviously, police aren't doing enough of a job of it, and they really weren't meant to in the first place. And so I don't know what I can say other than the one piece of an amendment I feel is one thing in this country is the second, because it gives you the power to protect your own life.
Not to step away from the Second Amendment, because I think there's a couple of different things that went on in that situation, because the Second Amendment is for him defending himself. And I have a question, because in the sense of these things called the no-knock warrants, not saying I feel like most people have a double standard with a no-knock warrant, because they're like, oh, if they thought that drugs was being peddled through their home, they had the right to go there and break, and I would say go inside of their property, right? Mm-hmm. But to understand that the person who the warrant would have been served for is not there, how does things like that work? Because for one, I was confused when I heard the situation. This is why I was confused in the case, Miles. Just to jump around, in the sense that they already caught the perpetrator, because I wouldn't say the word victim. Don't judge me, guys. They caught the perpetrator who they technically was looking for, but they still went to Breonna's place and decided to serve the warrant. And
so I want to back up a little bit, because there's been a lot of misinformation as well surrounding this case. Mm-hmm. So I want you to tell us what you personally know about the case, just so we can get a little bit of a foundation. Because even I've seen people say, well, they shot her in her sleep. And I swear to God, up and down the street, that they like literally went inside her house and looked at her in her bed and shot her. And until I actually started on the case. So, which is, just something else that we can put into context, because, it's a difference between saying things just because that's the way you speak, but actually being accurate in what you're saying, right? She wasn't sorry?
No, I said absolutely. I don't know if you cut off on the tail end. Keep going.
Yeah, she wasn't asleep when she was shot. She was awake at this point, but they did wake her up, banging on the door at whatever time in the morning, right? So, like I said, it's just a difference in, colloquialism, just the way you say things, that kind of translates to people running with a narrative that is not entirely accurate. So I want to give a little bit of a foundation. What do you know about this case?
Right. So from everything that, and to your point, from everything that I've researched, known, heard, double checked, fact checked, what ended up happening was she was shot on March 13th in her bed, located in her bed. She was woken up police obtained a no-knock warrant for her property in relation to a case that was being investigated by Louisville Police Department and the surrounding supportive bureaus related to her ex-boyfriend's narcotics trafficking operations. What was documented was that they had already made an arrest on the ex-boyfriend. They had already made progress in the primary suspect in that case, in that operation. However, they did have an outstanding warrant that wasn't necessarily struck down or denied. So once it's signed by a judge, you're able to go serve it.
Sorry. So was it a situation where they arrested her ex-boyfriend and the ex-boyfriend said, you'll find some of my stuff at her house? Or was it just a situation where they had two warrants at the same time and they executed the one that ended up in the arrest for the ex-boyfriend and then they went to execute the other?
Right. So this was a situation where they suspected that the ex-boyfriend was receiving packages that could contain narcotics, and that was sent, like people send weed to the USPS. It happens, I guess. But it was a situation in which they obtained two different warrants. In my knowledge, what actually happened was they obtained an outstanding warrant to go search Breonna and Kenneth Walker's residence, and ended up obtaining the primary suspect, her ex-boyfriend, sometime later, or sometime in the similar time vicinity. As such, it was signed by a judge. It was able to be executed. And so, I do think there is a bit of hyperbole when it comes to they just out and served they wantonly served an outstanding warrant. I can give a bit of credit, just a bit, having an aunt and an uncle who are in some of the highest ranks of NYPD. Once you get a warrant signed by a judge, you can consider that as good as served. Police unit is going to action upon that, especially if it's related to narcotics. And so whether that warrant was correct or not, they served it. Once the banging or announcement was at the door, as both police and some surrounding neighbors claim, once the initial noise disturbance was made by the police. Yes,
so,
go ahead.
This is something that I actually want to put a little bit of context to as well, because in reading initially about the case, there was a witness who said that they heard the police identify themselves as police as they were knocking and serving this warrant, right? Later on, the witness actually recanted.
Yeah.
So there, initially people were under the impression that they, served the warrant, even though it was a no-knock warrant. They did identify themselves as police. However, that didn't really happen. So we have a no-knock warrant and we have a knock with, no one identifying themselves, that anyone in the building or anyone nearby could hear, including the people inside the apartment. And then we have somebody busting through the apartment.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is what, no, and thank you for adding that in, because I would love to illuminate how hard it is to wade through these as an outraged public who deserves to be outraged for what happened, with a very traumatized surviving person, and with a witnesses who will give contradicting, recanted, or otherwise mismatching statements. So to what I know of that case was that at one point a witness did identify that there was a noise disturbance, that the police then made attempts to knock and or enter the home. Here's what I know for certain. For a fact, for ballistics, as I always say, and my uncle always say, there are two things that don't lie: numbers and bullets. All bullets that were fired on an outward trajectory outside of or coming from inside the house out were fired, Mr. Walker, Kenneth Walker. all bullets that were fired inward were fired by the Louisville Police Department through the wall, through exterior surfaces. So what I do know is that no one in the midst of the initial engagement and shooting entered Breonna's house, which makes this much worse. It was all a volley fired through outside premises, which is where Breonna was struck in her bed. And I guess according to the forensics reviewed, public records I reviewed, was in fact alive for a certain time before, any ambulances were called or any attention was drawn to the scene by medical professionals.
Well, I want to jump in because if I remember correctly, they didn't even attend to her after they shot her. Like, it's not until the second unit came and they addressed the fact that she was killed. That's when they took note of her, which I think, and that was crazy. And based on, and this is a two-sided story because I don't want to quote media. I'm gonna quote Mr. Walker in the same sense. They didn't really even pay any attention to Breonna till after they tried to harass him and get him out the resident. So in a sense that there was no care for the young lady up until that moment. And to go a little bit deeper, and this is conspiracy theorist, guys, so I can be all out of context. From what I came to understand, and this is from what other people have said, right? Mm-hmm. Is that based, and this is from the medical standpoint. This is the reason why I say conspiracy theories. If the police would have administered help within that moment, like, okay, we shot her, we took Mr. Walker down, this was a mistake, and they would administer aid, Breonna would have still been alive. And that part kind of struck me. I was like, hold up. And I was asking, and this is, as I said, from a medical standpoint, they were like, yeah, she could have been saved because her wounds at the moment was not detrimental to the point where she was killed instantly, right? And I was like, wow. So it's the negligence factor in the Breonna situation was turned up a little bit for me because it's other than you guys know you made a mistake on the warrant, right? You already got Mr. Walker. Then you didn't take the opportunity to make sure that the person that was inside was taken care of in any form or shape. Now, if it's a criminal enterprise and you already got the main protagonist or the person at fault, right? That means she would have been good for a trial case because you'd want to not kill her, snag her, make sure she was ready to sing like a bird. So I felt like in that sense that no negligence at all was taken in on Breonna based on that fact. So this is the reason why, Miles, I was so up in arms, and this is the reason why I felt the need to want to protest, because I felt that even though in the same sense that you made a mistake, that you guys didn't even attend to her. And then for one, you guys wouldn't even come out and said, guys, we made a mistake. Like, this was all wrong. We did everything. Like, I understand that we were executing the warrant. This was a mishap. Like, I would have took the opportunity for them to say, guys, I made a mistake. Like, it's unfortunate that Miss Taylor died, and we'd have been able to move forward from there. Not saying it would have been suffice, but that would have been a start. But to blatantly come out and I was like, yo, we didn't do anything wrong. We did everything by the book is what kind of struck me. It was like, you did everything by the book, and still the person who you came for, who you technically went there for, you didn't kill, right? But the innocent bystander in the moment, right, is the person who got dealt with without any caution. And it hurt me from there. So I want to make sure I throw that one in there, guys. But continue.
So I want to back up a little bit because I'm trying to take this piece by piece as to what happened that night. We were talking about the ballistics and the bullets. So you were saying that, the bullets that went into the apartment were all through, I guess, building or wall or furniture or whatever, right? And the bullets that left the apartment were all from Kenneth Walker.
Correct.
There was an officer who was shot in this entire situation.
Correct.
What do we know about that?
The officer was shot, I believe, and I'm looking at it now.
Okay, so let me, what I did know initially was that they were saying that Kenneth Walker was arrested because he shot the officer.
Yes, that initially reports were that he was arrested for striking an officer. In police protocol, typically all participants, I'll call it, in any firearm involved altercations are detained, especially when it comes to shooting at police, whether somebody's hit or not. So the initial claim that he was arrested for striking a police officer is a little bit inaccurate. He was detained on the principle of being involved in a shootout with police who were serving a lawfully signed warrant. Go ahead.
Right. So then it went a little bit further because recently we've heard that actually the police officer that was shot was not shot by Kenneth Walker.
Well, I actually didn't hear that, which would be interesting to hear.
Well, Miles, can I take a steal? Let me take a steal before you continue. And I'm happy that Janelle brought it up. I was gonna ask you that one myself, and the reason why I want to add this information in just so we can keep it in context. Mr. Walker, or Kenneth said he only fired one shot. I want to make sure of that. And he fired one shot from what I came to understand, and the officer who got shot after the shot started firing. But I'll let you guys continue.
So here's what we know, and here's what is told. Kentucky State Police ballistics report was concluded as inconclusive, saying that due to limited markings of comparative value, the bullet that hit Officer Mattingly and exited his thigh, he was shot in the thigh, was neither identified nor eliminated as having been fired from Kenneth Walker's firearm. However, in a limited engagement where 3 officers were carrying all registered .40 caliber guns, and the only other known involvement was Walker and his firearm, the bullet that exited his thigh was marked as a 9mm, which was the caliber that Mr. Walker's pistol was. So essentially, in the colloquial term of putting 2 and 2 together, it was concluded that the bullet, which was fired from inside the house and then hit Officer Mattingly in the thigh, originated from Mr. Walker's firearm. But apparently, that state ballistics report was rendered inconclusive. All that's known is that any officer that was involved that night was issued Smith & Wesson .40 caliber pistols, standard 2. And those were the bullets that took Breonna Taylor's life. Yeah, go ahead.
So after listening to Kenneth Walker speak, he said that he shot one warning shot. That was all he shot, basically.
Yeah.
Just to, let whoever was trying to break into their house or, get into their house know, like, hey, we're armed, etc. And that's what set off the flurry of gunfire, right?
Yeah.
So moving forward, he explained that he attempted to get, down and get Breonna down, and I guess she was stunned and didn't move and ended up getting hit. Eventually, after she was hit is when police started entering the apartment, and they were doing everything they could to arrest him. This is after a while, after at least a few minutes, because he had enough time to call his mother. After the gunfire stopped, he had enough time to call Breonna's mother and let her know that she was shot. And he had enough time to call the police.
Yeah.
So, which he explains, I found that to be logical. Why would I be calling the police if I think it's the police at the door? But okay. So eventually, after those few minutes and those few phone calls, the police come in and they, arrest him and lead him outside. I guess he's trying to explain to them, hey, somebody's shot, thinking that these are the same police that he called a few minutes earlier, that had come to help them, and eventually realizing that these are the same police officers that were shooting at them. they told him, I guess, that they wouldn't do anything until they arrested him. So they take him outside. He doesn't have shoes or socks on or anything like that. They walk him to the car, and then he starts. I guess he gets into a police car and starts speaking to somebody who was not on the scene, an officer who was not involved in the shooting, who specifically tells him, hey, there's been a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the situation that's going on back at the apartment, which obviously he isn't there for and doesn't see because he's currently arrested in a cop car, right? So the police apparently walk in and see her on the floor, clear the room or clear the apartment and say, okay, yeah, she's done. That's it. That is from his words. Do you know any more about that?
From that end, no. I don't know anything more than what I already don't trust from Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General of Kentucky, and what I do trust from Mr. Walker, which we seem to all have heard from him speaking. So there is nothing more I know other than the fact that, to the point earlier on how the details went down, he did fire one shot. The one shot must have been incredibly well placed. Police followed with a 32-shot volley, separated into two different volleys. 32 total shots fired into the house. Enough time for Mr. Walker to get down, attempt to save Breonna, call family, call police. The one officer, there was only apparently one officer that did enter the residence, was Officer Mattingly, was the one that got hit, and everybody else during the volley stayed outside. Officer Cosgrove fired 16 shots from the doorway, which is a whole clip. Officer Hankinson fired 10 from outside through the sliding glass door in the bedroom window, both of which are apparently covered by blinds. And Taylor was struck by the bullets in the hallway. It was identified that the bullets from Officer Cosgrove's gun were the ones that ended up taking her life. That's all I know as far as what was obviously told about the events immediately after the volley. It's what I know from Mr. Walker's detailing the story.
Okay, so dumb this down for somebody who absolutely no idea about guns. What is a volley?
Yeah, a volley is basically throwing bullets, like fully auto. You can think of it that way. A volley is when a bunch of people start shooting a lot at once. So if me, you, and Cornelius were to all take a pistol and repeatedly press the trigger and just press it as fast as we can, all of that together going in the same direction as a volley. So the police all stood there and fired their gun as fast as possible in the same general direction. That's a volley.
And you said this happened twice.
Yep. So in the first volley, that was right after, like the immediate moment after Officer Mattingly was struck, they fired the first half of that volley. So between the three of them, around 10 to 16 bullets were immediately injected into that. There's a bit of a break. Officer Mattingly then entered the home, where more bullets were fired into the hallway area, to the bedroom area, from both, obviously, the sliding glass door, from outside, and from Officer Mattingly, who was the only one to enter the home. After that second volley was done, they then arrested Mr. Walker, I guess cleared out the house, called for a second unit, and I guess declared or didn't pay any attention to what was going on with Breonna.
So this is interesting to me because putting in context the fact that one bullet, one lone warning shot came out of the apartment and they shot a flurry of bullets one time, a volley, right?
Yep.
They stopped. and then they entered the apartment and shot more, even though there was, no competing gunfire.
Yep.
Okay, this is all, wow, very interesting. You would imagine, I'm not a police officer. I rarely associate with police officers. Not really a fan. Sorry to tell you. I know you have, your family and all that. I don't.
Hey, I'll tell you about that later. We got into a huge fight about it because they know I'm not a fan of it at all.
Yeah. I don't do social settings with police officers. None at all. Like the minute that I know that you're any kind of law enforcement, I will just be in one corner and you can have the room. Like I just can't. So I don't know much about it, right? But what I imagine a logical thing to do in a situation like that, where there is no competing gunfire except that one warning shot, and you've already shot a bunch of times into the apartment, is to stop and say, hey, come out with your hands up and see if there's even anyone still alive. I don't know. Is there a different kind of protocol that they were following? Like, is that maybe not what you're supposed to describe? I don't know.
Wait, well, hold on. Let me take a stab at that, Jen. I'm happy you said that because from me being in environments that I should not be in, that's considered a gang protocol. The normal protocol is as police officer, if one shot is fired upon you, what you're supposed to do as safety and a precaution, you're supposed to make sure that the area is completely locked down. So that one shot should have fired. They technically should have notified neighbors that we have a shooter in the facility. We have to evacuate the building. The evacuation process did not take heed, as we can attest that one of the neighbors I think got gauged. If I'm corrected, there was a lawsuit from that family. But they never really tried to lock the area down. So what is considered that the area that they went into was considered gang territory. That's how they're labeling it. So and in that sense, everybody inside of that apartment complex would have been considered a gang member in that moment. So this is the reason why, Miles, I'm gonna tell you, I bring you in. There's so much angles that can be gone, because as you can, Miles said, he spoke with his police officers, family members who lives in New York. I took the opportunity to talk to some of the police officers that I know from Broward County, and I want to say Broward County, which is in Fort Lauderdale, who basically let me know that the situation, the best way they could put it is that it was treated as a gang activity. That's the reason why it was deemed that way. And the thing that they said was wrong. This is the reason why I can't call any names about what police officers, because I won't put anybody's job in jeopardy. They said it was incorrect because normally they do a background check on the people who they're attending to. So, for example, if they knew Breonna's ex-boyfriend was shipping product to her resident, they normally would have looked into the personnel themselves, which is Breonna, not Mr. Walker, to realize that she has no criminal record, right? And an investigation would technically have to lead before they could have a no-knock warrant. But then again, I am not very much versed in the police conversation. But from what I came to understand, and fully aware of, that the situation was treated that it was gang related. That's the reason why they handled it that way.
Well,
even though she had no record. Continue, Miles.
You can take it just from the bare fact of the matter that, even aside from the gang related part of it, it was a narcotics warrant. Police treat narcotics. My aunt, she served narcotics before she transitioned to financial crimes, and my aunt would call me from stakeouts. I have vivid conversations where she'd be like, "All right, what do you want for your birthday?" And I'm like, "Are you doing something?" "Yeah, I'm on a stakeout." Narcotics operations are what you could consider very domestic, like paramilitary operations. So when you're serving a narcotics warrant, first of all, it's quite unusual for any narcotics warrant to be served by any other unit other than a SWAT unit. SWAT units are tactically trained to invade dope houses, to invade trap houses, SWAT units are armed with battering rams, with AR-15s with armor-piercing rounds. They are tactically equipped to take out houses without them knowing you're there. They're also tactically equipped not only to handle any fire that comes their way and return it, but also trained to arrest all members inside a targeted area alive. So by all accounts, gang-related or not, what happened was wrong from a protocol perspective regarding the police. And I guess that's just fact number 1, 2, and 3. And that is to Cian's point about, where they treated it. They did treat it as a sort of gang-involved tactical measure. But even by narcotic standards, there are ways that could have been handled much better. And I guess that's, as far as that's concerned, that's maybe even 1/8 of the outrage that people have around it.
So I find it really interesting that it was treated as, gang involvement, because it was recently that a whole news story came out of California where there were police officers that were actually falsifying arrest reports and saying that the people they were arresting were parts of gangs.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. I mean, I don't know about the paperwork in this case, but I almost have to wonder if that's really what was going on. If, they were just kind of marking it down like, hey, gang related. And, it kind of just got an arrest warrant pushed through. I mean, not an arrest warrant, sorry, a search warrant.
Oh, yeah.
Or was it?
Have you seen Training Day?
I don't. So
Yeah, I've seen Training Day.
Okay.
To answer Miles's question, but I would say this, Janelle. Yes, it's very strong, and I think I'm gonna use 50 Cent Many Men song video, put it in perspective when to them and I want to say to them, you're just a picture on a chalkboard for them to put an X on. Right? It's just going through the motions. There's no, and I feel like this is why I'm not saying I'm gonna have to defund the police conversation right now, but this is the reason why I feel like policing needs to get completely reevaluated to a sense that it needs to start back from the root. Because I think Miles started in the beginning of the conversation how policing started. Now I want you to understand, if something was started that was never really meant for us, it's never going to be for us. So what they need to do is to really reevaluate that whole part. And not to say policing is wrong, because we already know, and I'm gonna speak for women in this moment. I believe rapists should either go to jail or die, but that's a whole other conversation, right? And that's from a woman perspective. From kids' perspective, all pedophilia should be murdered, but that's just me. All anybody who's stealing or criminal activities, if you're really robbing and hurting people, you need to go to jail. So there are resources that we need. Police are people who consider themselves police, because you can title it whatever name you want. But the way the system is, and we can dig deeper, Janelle. We don't have a problem digging deeper, but to the sense that they really, really need to have something set in stones that could be beneficial to people. Now, I've heard them say that, they need to have licensed therapists. They're not whatever, guidance counselors, whatever name they want to use them to go with police on their thing. And I'm not saying no, but I would like to say this: if someone calls in a domestic violence, right? It's not all the time somebody who's never dealt with something domestic should not show up there, because any man or woman know 99% of the time, most couple who fights, there's a possibility they get back together, right? Even though that's dangerous, but you need somebody there who can de-escalate the situation before it gets escalated even higher. And I feel like these are the things that police need to fix: how to stop escalation and to work on de-escalation. Now, in the sense of Breonna, I would say that and I'm gonna go as far as if Mr. Walker fired the first shot, and I'm gonna use movies. I'm not even gonna use police protocol. Normally, when the first shot is fired, all you hear is police, 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 and I'm screaming in the mic now. That guys, don't judge me. But you'd hear police, 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 police. Yo, put the weapons down, put the weapons down. We're coming in, we're coming in, we're coming in. And I want you to realize that's the reason why I am very big on the one shot being fired. The one shot is very, very important to me. If Mr. Walker would have fired multiple shots, right? And for all my black people out there, don't hate me for saying this. If he would have fired multiple shots, that would have been him putting himself in harm's way to kind of got what was coming to him and Breonna. But for one shot being fired and for you to be a trained police officers, you acted as if you were not trained at all. This seemed like this was your first. Matter of fact, this didn't even seem like you even did the training protocol. It seemed like you watched the training video and you were texting during the video, or your mama called you and you walked out in the hallway, and the part that was important to you, you missed. And this is what happened. Now, just so we can bring that back in context.
So,
wait. So I want to go back a little bit again because I think we kind of covered what actually happened on scene, right? Tell us what you know about what has been going on with the grand jury and the attorney general and all of that, because there was a whole hot mess that came out of that situation.
Oh yeah. I got bars for that situation. So here's the issue, and I promise I'm gonna tie this in, so I'll make this short. You both said two things that were extremely important. Number one, CN, going back to the root of policing. We talk about the root of policing is basically to keep black people enslaved, incarcerated, or in carceral forms. It's my belief that obviously if the root is poisonous, you take the root out. And so it's hard to reform or relook at a system and knowing the whole thing's poisonous and then, saying we got to keep it in there and reform it. I do believe that obviously police have been integral and now integrated into society. But there's something to be said of how, and then to Janelle's point number two, corrupt they are. Falsifying reports. I bring up Training Day because one of my favorite quotes in there from my favorite actor of all time, who is a despicable, a great, but like plays a despicable man so great. Denzel, who goes, "Nothing's free in life, Jake, not even arrest warrants." Warrants, reports, gang-related activity, you name it, the police can corrupt it, file it, shift it, change it, and fit their narrative. So that's even to the point. Now, from that point, let's lead into what happened with the grand jury. And this is where my philosophy comes from. Justice will never be served in a court of law because you weren't meant to see that justice. If we had this, true justice would be Breonna was alive today, but obviously that's not the case. Daniel Cameron is the Attorney General of Kentucky, is the highest ranking law enforcement official in Kentucky. The way law procedures work, Daniel Cameron is in charge of launching an investigation into what happened. Okay? So before a grand jury even gets into place, one man, or one person, I should say, even in this case it's a man, is responsible for crafting the investigation, for taking the oath of responsibility to launching an investigation thoroughly into the facts. Strike one, because Daniel Cameron, who is romantically involved with Mitch McConnell's niece, is a card-carrying Trump supporter who ran on a platform. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Time out.
I don't want to harp on the whole romantically involved part because I believe they are married.
Are they?
I have heard that. Is that not his wife?
No, I think it is. I said romantically involved.
Wait, hold up, Miles, because that struck me too. Because I already know what part Mitch McConnell plays in our political system in so many different ways. So I wouldn't even go too much deeper into the Tea Party movement. But Janelle, I'm serious. You laugh. That's what it's called. It's literally called the Tea Party movement, bro.
I'll get right on track because I brought that up for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So the way our system works is that the attorney general, and you're right, they're married. The way the system works, attorney general is responsible for law. The attorney general is an elected position. It's a political appointment. It's not an objective law. You're either a Democrat or a Republican as an attorney general. That's already a problem. So whichever way you lean politically is going to involve what you do. And Daniel Cameron, who ran on a Make America Great Again platform within that whole party, ran very candidly within Kentucky as I will protect the officers. I will be an officer's friend. That's strike two. Because the man that's already leading your investigation is not going to give Breonna Taylor or Kenneth Walker a fair shake at all. Black, white, or otherwise. Makes it worse that he was black. So you struck out from there. Now, here's what actually happened. Cameron ran an investigation that is almost, and I'm giving him 1% of the benefit of the doubt, almost certain to be shady, corrupt, and short. What happened was he presented a select bits and pieces of information to the grand jury who decides whether they indict. The grand jury then hears Daniel Cameron's proceedings and findings. It's a private, there's no fanfare. There are no people in the courtroom. A grand jury is where Daniel Cameron gets up in front of a preliminary pool of people and says, here's what I found. Here are the facts of the case as I present them. Now, here's the charges that my office presents. What say you? So it's not even a jury's fault of what happens. It's not like they're hearing all of the facts. It's not like they're hearing everything. They're hearing what Daniel Cameron presents to them. So yeah, based on whatever investigation was presented, they said, yeah, we can only reasonably be, of the facts you've listed, we can only reasonably charge this one officer with wanton endangerment for hitting a house, as you presented by the law.
Well, so after the grand jury was over, there was a situation where one of the jurors actually went to the courts to try to have the grand jury testimony and what's the word?
Released.
Yep. Right. Unsealed and released, right?
Yep.
The reason that he gave apparently is that the attorney general didn't even offer murder as a charge. So I'm not sure where that's gotten so far. I don't know if they did sit.
I'm glad you brought that up, because guess what happened today? As a matter of fact, a Kentucky judge ruled that they can release the records. So in a couple days, we are going to find out what the hell happened. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. I know CN told me about that earlier.
No, that's fine. That's
fine.
No,
you're fine. You're fine. Heaven and hell is real, bro.
And
so
in a couple days, we're going to find out what happened.
I'm so excited right now because I just think that we're having this discussion. It's so timely. I really did not know that happened today, so that's awesome. Today being October 20th, guys, because we record early. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to learning more about what happened in that room, because I think it's obvious at this point. I mean, I don't know that I've seen many cases where a juror comes out and says, hey, no, the people need to know about what happened in there.
It's that time. It's what I call that time. There are many times. I mean, we've had in life, we've had a few seminal court cases. I mean, I'm sure because I'm probably a little bit younger than you both. I would say y'all were at least alive for OJ. We have, obviously Trayvon Martin and Casey Anthony for that matter. I have a deep cut like Scott Peterson where he, murdered his wife and family. Like there are seminal court cases where like jurors are going to be called out to say something. Even Rodney King, they're going to be called out to say something, write something, explain something, talk about what happened. Like you said, in the days back then, those were few and far between. it has come to a point now where everything is on the top of our minds. And this case happened by the grace, because it usually goes to case where, Black women's cases kind of get shunned under, even under when Black men are assassinated. So by the grace of God, this got some national attention, a lot of it, a great deal of it. And it got enough to where a juror is going to come out and say, nah, I know what happened, which is how I know. That's the tell. That's the tell where Daniel Cameron went in, ran that investigation, didn't offer murder as a charge, and said, here's what you got. Choose out of this. That's a flaw in our system. Just choose out of what I, as a politically charged individual, present to you. Now go. And you're bound by that.
Yeah. So I think that, we've had a somewhat of a long enough podcast. I do just want to address for a little bit what Cian was talking about and what you were talking about earlier, about overhauling the police. So I'm not really, I'm very liberal, but I'm not really on the side of completely getting rid of police. Although I know that the police were not meant for us, I do think that they're an important part of society, as you said, at this point in time. I kind of feel like at this point, the entire system needs to be overhauled. It's not just police. We have a system where police officers kind of govern themselves. Somebody gets fired and they put a bunch of police officers in a room and say, hey, should they get their job back? And then all of a sudden everything is wonderful and the police officer is back working. I think that is inherently flawed. I think that, more than inherently flawed, that's ridiculous. Who does that? Where do they do that? What job can I go to that I can, just call my friends in here and ask them if I should get my job back?
Yeah.
But apart from police, I think, as I said, the entire system needs an overhauling. It's not just police officers that are corrupt. It's also judges. It's also lawyers. It's the entire system. And on top of the people who play a part in the corruption and in the system, you also have a system that is, quote unquote, designed to rehabilitate, that is not allowing people to be rehabilitated.
Correct.
Because you come out of the system, if you at all get a chance to come out of the system, right? Because we do have, disproportionate sentencing where one person will be, in jail for their entire lifetime for, a tiny amount of coke, right? We have that. We've seen it. It's around and obvious at this point. But if you do get a chance to say, okay, I'm serving 5 to 10 years and I get out and I still have somewhat of a life to live, then we have to deal with probation and parole. And then we have to deal with check-ins and, oh my God, I was 1 minute late for my curfew at 9:01 p.m. and now I have to go back to jail because I, quote unquote, violated probation. Doesn't matter if there was traffic, doesn't matter if a damn spaceship came down and said, we're kidnapping you for the day and now you're back in your house at 9:01. Does not matter what happened, 9:01, and you are not there when check-in is supposed to be there, and you're going back to jail. So you have a system that is almost impossible to come out of. There's not. Yeah. It's so difficult for people to find their way out of the system and, quote unquote, be rehabilitated, because no matter what you do, you're going back inside. Now, not a lot of people know this about me, but I can say it because you can't find my records. I've been arrested before. I've been on probation before. And when it comes to probation, I literally spent my entire 6 months of probation inside my house because I was terrified that no matter what I did, something was going to go wrong. I was going to, be somewhere, because, at that point I was really young. I was going to be somewhere with a friend and a police officer would stop my friend, and all of a sudden I would be in trouble now because a police officer is talking to me and I'm on probation. I was scared that, a friend might have weed on them and I didn't know, but somebody gets, stopped and arrested, and now I'm at fault because I'm in a car, in a room, or whatever with somebody who has weed on them. Yep. Right? And we all know that, it doesn't matter who has the weed, everybody's going down, right? Yep. I was so terrified to do anything at that point in time that literally for those entire 6 months, until all my check-ins were done, until all my courses were done, until everything was done, all my fees were paid, all of that, I did not leave my house.
Yeah.
I didn't go anywhere. But guess what? At that point in time and at that age in my life, I was capable of doing that. I had no kids. I had no marriage. I had no job. I literally could just sit down at home and do nothing. When you have families to take care of, when you have, let's say you need to go pick your daughter up because it's your weekend to have her and you're on probation, but the mother doesn't care and, keeps her out past a certain time. And now you have to, rush home and, oh my gosh, you get stopped by a cop and like, oh, wait, now, I'm violating probation because I'm late home. Like anything that happens in everyday life, I think people take it for granted that like, once you're on probation and out of jail and, living a normal life at that point, there's no real chance for rehabilitation because the things that average people think about is not like, oh my God, I'm going to be 1 minute late.
Yeah.
So when I tell you I am completely there when it comes to overhauling the entire system, all the rules and the principles that this system is based off of, the foundation, it all needs to get blown up and put back together. But I also, like I said, understand the need and necessity to have people there that supposedly, quote unquote, have our backs. So if it is at all possible to revamp and rehaul and come back with, no corruption and come back with police officers who are actually educated and trained properly and come back with police officers who actually care and are not overworked and are not just, oh, let me just fill out a bunch of, reports and what do they call that at the end of the month? Like
quota
the name quota.
Yeah.
If it's at all possible to have that, then I completely agree that that needs to get done. But at this point in time, what are your thoughts on that actually being a thing?
So I'm a card on the table. I'm a leftist. So I believe that, I don't think leftism is one, shut political philosophy, but I do believe in America inherently being one of the most despicable places ever to be thought of. And so I guess for me, I imagine futures, and many people before me, my grandmother before me, my great grandfather and grandmother before me, and my ancestors, and many people in our lifetime that live with us, our peers. There are many people that dream of things not yet in play, and I feel like my dream of community policing being the thing, policing as a whole being torn down as driven by reality as it is by my dream. Now I will reconcile, when I say that, is I reconcile that the same dream you have of, if at all possible, can we have people that just are good people and don't want to kill and rob and corrupt? That is the same dream I have of getting rid of them all. And here's why. The reality in me is not just based on theory. And it's not based on all of the things that, I could learn from an institution or the things that I can think of. It's based on the fact that across, let's be generous, it's 2020. Across 160 years, over 23 different presidents, including a black one, multiple different administrations, multiple elements of republicanism, liberalism, we've had the same problem. In 1992, Rodney King was beat on tape. The tape was sold through the hood. Tape was sold and played on airwaves. Everybody. In 2012, when Kumbaya was here and Barack was president, a kid that looked like me and Alvin and Cien that lived 20 minutes up the road in Stanford got assassinated by a rogue vigilante. None happened. Yeah. We have now entered an era where prisons are private. People like you and me own prisons. We have a vice presidential candidate that has sent people to those same prisons and then locked up the black mothers who couldn't afford to send their kids to school. Sent them to them same prisons. But she's a black woman. And she says black women need better. Black women deserve better. Ma'am, you are a cop. You sent the same people that you swore to serve and protect. Mothers who were in hoods that your police officers created, served crack into, defunded, ruined, corrupted. Now they have no way outside of them getting to work, of sending their kid to school. Can't afford to pay for public transportation. You locked them up because their kid went missing from school. Most of the time because they had no way there. When I tell you that the system for me is irredeemable, that's what I mean. Yeah. From the top up and down. And again, I say that with respect because I don't believe anything's impossible. And simply it's a matter of whichever one of us chooses to work for. And I don't look either way on anyone. For me, I work for you and many other people, the majority of people, work for a world where police are more just. I think your reality is a lot more tangible because whether I like it or not, police aren't going anywhere without a war. Unless we all got up and said we are sick and tired of y'all killing us and started shooting back, and that's not going to happen. So I think a world where we could try and reform police is much more tangible. But even in that tangibility, what we have to ask ourselves, what are we working for? What are we extending and expending our effort towards when it comes to who are we trying to save? Because just as certain as it is that police are not going anywhere, so is it too that there will always an element of policing and the people in policing that are going to actively work to see us dead. And to me, that's where I'm at, is that if I'm going to dream for a future one way or another, I'm going to try and work for the one that doesn't involve them at all. And that is simply because what we have now is it looks like a monster to reform. And like you said, it extends past police. It extends to the fact that schooling is forever unequal. The wage gap, even broken down and stratified to the fact that black women make less than anybody else working in the market right now, is almost irredeemable. And that's nothing that we can simply just reform, because now we're going to get into a whole nother conversation about capitalism. And God knows I would drone on for hours about that. But how do you reform a system that says, oh, it's fair field? Now there's no segregation. Now everybody goes to the same schools. Now there's nothing stopping you. That's not true. There are many barriers and blocks for people that look like us as opposed to people that look like you, which is why you make pennies on the dollar to what I make, which is why I make half the dollar on what Tim makes. And so when you intertwine that with prisons, with the school to prison pipeline, with environmental justice, it goes on and on to the fact that I guess what I'm saying is America was built and weaved by our hands, but with people with blueprints so that we would stay down at the bottom. And if we can agree that it is almost impossible to reform the system. And we can agree that it's equally or even not to get, folks like dreaming of a world where, this stuff just doesn't exist, or like remove policing and all this stuff out. I guess that's where I'm at, is we saw tangible evidence that what I thought was not possible was possible when one of the country's 20 biggest cities got their police department funds reallocated. It wasn't even completely defunded. Minneapolis police is still there, but their funds, in a large way, their tax-paying funds, are now reallocated. They're not getting as much money. And that came from our anger. That came from, quite frankly, burning buildings down. Because we've been marching for how long? And how much progress have we made? So I guess that's where my philosophy sits. But if at all possible, I would love if we could actually have nice police. You're local here too, right?
No, I'm in Miami.
You're in Maine?
Miami.
Oh, Miami. Oh, God, even better. Great. So we're both in areas where we have very, very hardcore conservative people. And conservative people aren't the only bad people in the world. God knows. But in the term, in I guess the use of the term conservative, I mean, you want to maintain something, a status quo. You have many people who are fine with things as they are now. And I mean, me and CN live in a county where CN, which incident was this? Was this Ahmaud? It wasn't Ahmaud Arbery. This had to be this was George Floyd's incident. Where one of the sheriffs that worked made a very public Facebook post and said, hey, for all the officers that just got fired from Minneapolis, come down to Brevard County. We won't charge you. That came from where we live.
I saw that. Well, they were saying come down for jobs, right?
Yeah. When somebody got fired for blatant misconduct, that resulted in a death, your response was come down here to sunny Florida, Brevard County. We got jobs for you. That fraternal order, that gang of police.
Yes.
I got your back. When you kill somebody, I got your back. When you do wrong, I got your back.
And Miles, to confirm, it was during the George Floyd. They were telling the police officer that, and I can't quote which person it was, but it was being said in this area locally about and that was among our peers. And I'm using the word peers because I like using the word peers in my area because it's so heavily diverse. Yep. Where someone Caucasian brought this information to me. They're like, hey, did you hear what happened? And I'm like, no. Oh, yeah, they're telling the officers that from up there, but if they have issues with their job, they can come down here. We have a place for them. And can you believe that making that statement? And I'm going to say this, guys. Whenever I have conversation with my Caucasian friends, especially ones that jump out the wazoo, I like giving the surprise face. Like, really? That really was happening. Oh, my gosh. And I'm going to say this. I enjoy it because I gain a lot of information by using the really face. A lot. So, yes. And they're the one who potentially told me and they gave me a small enlightenment about why. Because Blue Lives Matter. And I would say this. And I'm going to say this for all of our Caucasian listeners out there. If I was not because some of you guys don't have black friends means that you guys don't understand. But I feel like if you guys have taken the opportunity to go through history with us, you should by now seen and understand what difference we were feeling. And I'm using the word because I'm trying to stay in context without saying, guys, get yourself a black friend so you can understand what we're going through. But the best way you can do it is to take a look at black history to see and understand. You should at least by now understand the oppression that we've been through, and not during the 18th century, and I wouldn't even say just the 19th century. We're in the 20th century right now, and some of those oppressive barriers are still there. And guys, not to be taken out of context, yes, a lot of the barriers has been eliminated. It's been eliminated in some of the most dangerous ways. And even though I'm not trying to preach that narrative at this current moment, that it took something radical to get the movement going. But I'm gonna need you guys to watch, please. I mean, don't stay on the sidelines. You know, I'm not saying I hate all the Karens, because I like Kathy. Kathy will see me walking and decide that she will give me a cup of water. You know, Karen may decide that I don't need to be drinking the water at the moment, but I'm shouting for Kathy, who's bringing the water to the sideline, who's trying to understand the struggle, to realize that not everybody who's part of the struggle deserves to be there. And I think that's one of the reasons why, to me, the system needs to be reevaluated. But Miles, I've raised couple strong point of perspective. Now, Miles, I would like to say this: the conversation we're having on the podcast today has been essential. I think I can put it in any other way, in any essential. I don't know. I'm not sure how much deeper I would like to get for today, but
we still could. This could so many different directions. I was like, oh, I want to talk about that. Oh no, but we're already an hour and 20 minutes in. So definitely need to wrap it up. I do want to say, Cian, that you just made me like gut check myself a while ago, because you were like, we're in the 20th century, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
We're in the 21st century, homie.
Oh, see, Jet, you see what I'm saying? And oppression is still there, and that's just how we put things back in context, to say the least. Now, I want to give a special thanks to my honorable guest, Miles Brinkley. Miles, thank you for gracing me with your words and your presence. It was really, really appreciated. I would say this: I'm just gonna let you know from now. I'm wanting you to come back. There's more that I definitely want to talk to you about, and the reason why I didn't go there, and I'm gonna tell you why, is based on the fact that the statement that you said that there's things or information that's going to be released, right? And I was going to address that conversation, but because you put that nice, beautiful indentation and what we're talking about, is why I'm going to have to ask you to come back so we can continue this conversation.
I was going to say thank you. This is a wonderful podcast, and thank y'all for having me. I'm honored to be on it. Look, literally, you got my number anytime, within the week, within the next 2 weeks. It don't matter. We can set a time, and I would be honored to come back, because there's so much more that we could. And I was thinking it too. I was like, oh no, there are too many forks in the road we got to go into.
I'm gonna say this, guys. I want you guys to understand. When I was 45 minutes in recording, guys, that's when I realized that it would take more than one episode to get this information across. Like, I've realized, because I felt like we're peeling off the layers of the onion, and as crazy as it sounds, I felt like I haven't peeled the first piece off yet. Like I'm peeling that first layer, and it's keep breaking. Like I got to keep stripping it slowly, and there's so much more need to be added. But guys,
to be fair, the episode was about Breonna Taylor, and the information that we currently have, we did that.
Yeah.
We can discuss, information that comes out later on. But Miles, definitely a pleasure having you. This conversation was great. I enjoyed it. I do hope you come back. Guys, we got to wrap it up. Last week we were talking about Cardi's nip slip, so if you missed that, go and check it out.
Your Miles' face like, hold up.
I'm about to put that on the playlist.
All right, so guys, again, you guys know the routine: like, subscribe, share, and please drop a comment if there's anything that you felt that was said that was out of context that you would like to be put back in context. Please feel free to do so. Until next time, peace.